Hello everyone, I'm Forrest McFreelava, and this is Speedplay Papal Italy number 8. We left off having made peace with all of the European countries around us, and actually everyone in the world, believe it or not. We're going to take a moment to just start pulling all of our undermanned regiments, or armies, or whatever we are calling them at this point. We're going to just bring them all back, just sort of to a central mustering ground so that we can really just rifle through them, get everyone back up to full strength. And also, while we're at it, since we are at peace, that means we're fully back into the world economy, which means this is the ideal time to start building armies. We also don't have to worry about roving enemy groups roaming around and killing stacks as they rise, or as they're created, except potentially rebels, although hopefully we have a pretty good handle on that. So we just go ahead and build up our armies. Essentially, we want to, first of all, just build up as much as we can, leaving a few leftovers, and then once we get all of these armies back into the field, we'll probably still have a few remnants left over. So we go ahead and just fill that out. Now, for whatever reason, in Victoria 2, it never seems like you end up with complete nothing but full working armies. I'm not sure what happens that somehow never seems to make that work fully, but once you're an actual empire with territories spanning multiple continents, it always seems like there's some straggling regiment somewhere. It doesn't matter though, as long as the majority of our army is all together. You noticed we also began to fabricate a casus belli against a state. The goal essentially for this period of time is 1. Constant elections. I have basically learned that we really shouldn't rely on our pop's jingoism, so we're going to constantly be pumping out elections, focusing more than anything else on getting our people jingoistic enough so that when war inevitably does come, we will be able to take everything we want in it. Secondarily, we're just going to start eating all of the minor powers around us, such as Sokoto. Basically just countries that I don't want to say have no reason to exist, but have no reason to be allowed to continue existing. We may as well just incorporate them into our country. The long-term goal is that we're going to take over all of Africa and all of the Mediterranean coast. We also get an interesting event where our leader, the Pope, has kind of sided with the poor, which increases their consciousness and or militancy. So that's interesting. I guess ultimately we are headed by a religious figure whose stated goal is, salvation of all mankind. We'll lead that through joining them into Italy. After all, clearly, if we're led by such a well-meaning person, then we would be the most well-led state in the world. So it is our duty to get more people into, the papal Italian state. Papal Italian state. Sorry, I keep slipping into that. And, yeah, so we go ahead, we can declare on Sokoto, we begin fabricating another claim on another state, and we just begin moving in. Now, with Sokoto, they're too large for us to actually integrate them entirely in a single war, so we're just going to take a bit off of them. Unless we did that last time, in which case we're actually coming to fully annex them now. Which, yeah, taking a look at them, we are annexing them right now. Sorry about that. The semester just started, not to throw out excuses or anything. At any rate, moving on. We are doing very well. Just ravaging Sokoto. They can't actually do anything to stop us. We probably didn't even need to bring 2 full armies down there. We could have just sent the unorganized random units, but that's just because we have fully gotten our military techs, which means even against European powers we're essentially unstoppable. In Algiers, we declare war on them to just annex them. We do actually just send the unorganized scraps of our armies, and it works fairly well. Interestingly enough, the biggest concern we're going to have with taking over Africa is that we don't really have very many armies stationed there. I kind of want to keep our armies in Europe. So the biggest difficulty is just going to be walking our armies to the fights in a timely manner. We send some forces down to Transvaal so that we can take that over once the casus belli is ready. and just keep calling infinite elections. Now, I imagine... Okay, first of all, now we do declare war on Serbia. Serbia went bankrupt, which gave us a free casus belli, and we have jingoism because we got it in an election, which means we can just declare on them for that, and then a month later, without waiting any time at all, add an annexation casus belli. Unfortunately, the Russians have joined in the Serbs' defense, and that means we won't be able to peace out with the Serbs unless we add a war goal against the Russians. We add the war goal simply to humiliate Russia. Now, I fully expect that this will either mean nothing happens in the war for the longest time. We did annex Serbia, so they're just kind of sticking it out on their own, waiting to either be humiliated or to release the Serbs. And yeah, so we're just going to keep our armies more or less parked on the border with Austria. I imagine the Russians will either get access through Austria or do nothing. And there's already a Russian army in our land, so they got access. Now all we have to do is defend our country against the Russians who are moving through Austria to get to us. And if we succeed at that, we'll eventually humiliate them and peace will be declared. Worst case, even if they stop sending armies, which now that they've started, they will just keep sending armies. Worst case, we would have just made a white peace, as it doesn't really matter. The Russians are probably not going to be too enthused to be in this war, as they didn't declare it, and their war goal is kind of an odd one. Now, just so long as we are able to hold out and defend ourselves, I'm not too concerned. I guess absolute worst case scenario would be if they just overwhelm us, and a lot of fights are breaking out. We still declare war on Transvaal, as we can probably take it on as well as fight the Russians. And while there were and still are a series of somewhat large battles, but mainly small, we are able to just make peace with them. They didn't have very much of a stomach for that fight, and they accepted the slight humiliation of not being able to stop us. With that all said and done, we begin pulling our forces against Spain. Now, I'm not sure how many wars it will take to get all of the demands we want from the Spanish. However, we are still in a point where we have a lot of jingoism, and we need to add war goals against the Spanish, unlike states, say, Ethiopia, or, well, just mainly Ethiopia, or Montenegro, or Greece, or Switzerland, which we can declare war on and annex in a single war. We need to add war goals to the Spanish, so it's important we declare war on them now. The only other state that's the case is going to be, actually, there will be a few. Morocco, Egypt, and the Ottoman Empire we will need to take provinces from and then either declare a second war or add war goals. So with that in mind, we're going to declare war on Spain first. The others we have a truce with, so we can't declare on, except Morocco. We can go after them, and we probably should. The war with Ethiopia we just declared brought in Yemen, so we're going to have to siege them both. And we are able to cross over. I send a fleet, but then send it back halfway through, only to realize that Yemen does have an island, and an island that I actually have heard about. It's named like Socotra. I'm probably terribly mispronouncing that. Although it is an interesting island, and there is some neat plant life and just a different and diverse ecology to it. So it's a very nice place. It's worth adding to our empire, if for no other reason than because I kind of like it. At any rate, we move our armies into Spain. We've just let them build up. We're sending them forward in a way that's probably going to take a lot of casualties due to attrition by just sort of ramming them over one another. However, if the Spanish do defend themselves, like they are right there, worst case, we'll just start steamrolling into them, and it won't really matter all that much. This war is so small that I'm not even going to look up the casualties. I will bring up the casualty listings for our war against Russia, quick though it was. I kind of want to see how many lives Russian pride was worth in that instance, how many it took to humiliate them. As terribly morbid as that is. Moving on though, our armies are just marching forward against nominal at the harshest, resistance. It's very straightforward. We're doing very well. We start landing our troops from our ships onto Socotra. Our armies are just rolling through Spain. We get a couple of events to become first to the North Pole. I'm gonna try to do that. It only costs 1,000. That's ridiculously cheap for all the potential prestige. We're already leading by prestige, so it doesn't really matter all that much, but it would be nice to get more prestige. No one's ever going to say they want their country to be less prestigious. Or, I mean, some people probably will, but, you know, we support our country here. Because we lead it. At any rate, we are pretty much just tying through all of these wars. There's not really all that much to them. We'll probably end up fighting all of the major powers again in the very near future. Our truce ends with them, I believe, in I want to say 96, 86. Basically at the year that ends in 6, that's coming up the most quickly. And I know it's obvious that we can just kind of look at it. Unfortunately, the way this plays back, I don't actually see the number in that much clarity. At any rate, 250,000 Russian and Serbian lives, 113,000 Italians. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.